2,500 years ago, when the Israelites came back from captivity, the temple was destroyed and most of them had no idea how to approach God. And so they came up with a system of discipleship, Bible study, how to run church, things like that, to introduce the people back to God. And so what they implemented was a system of studying the Torah. Now, the Torah can be a term that defines just the first 5 books of Moses, but widely Torah is actually the whole Old Testament. But even wider than that, it's the Old Testament, New Testament for us, but it's also all the teachings of the rabbis. But the most important thing for them was to study the first 5 books of Moses on a weekly schedule. So they broke up the first 5 books into 52 readings, which are read throughout a year. And so on the Saturday, they start a new Torah portion. So a portion is like a section of scripture. And the whole idea is everybody reads it, and then we come together and we talk about it. And you learn by asking questions. You learn by thinking about the text. It's also a very balanced way of... See, a lot of us have a tendency to just want to read what we like. But when you're actually forced to go through in order, you get exposed to everything. You don't just hear what you want to hear. You get the whole counsel of God, which is what we need. If you're just all faith, it's no good. If you're all about prosperity, it's good, but it's not good. It's unbalanced. You need to have everything. The other thing, and this might sound a bit radical, I honestly don't believe we can understand the New Testament properly if we don't know the Torah. And as you go through this, you go, oh my goodness, this is amazing. It'll make the whole New Testament come alive when you actually study the first 5 books. So I really, really, really feel this is important. The other thing it says in Acts, and I don't think I wrote down. I did write down. In Acts 15:21, it says, "For Moses, from ancient generations, has in every city those who preach him, since he is read in the synagogues every Sabbath." So in the book of Acts, the early disciples, it actually says, they read Moses, as in the Torah, every Sabbath. So it's really important. So I want to get stuck into it, and I want questions, but I'm going to sort of go through a bit, and then, so I am using some source material for this, and hopefully this will come up properly. Everybody can see that online? And if I hit this key, yay, I'm still here. Except I've got to adjust it a little bit. So you can see that okay? Yes. So this is Vayak'hel. Means, and he assembled. So what they would read is Exodus 35:1 to 38:20. Now, my thing is that if you can only read a few verses, great. If you can read the whole thing, great. I cheated. I listened to it. I've listened to it a few times. I actually would recommend listening to it over reading it sometimes, because the Bible actually says that it was read in the synagogue, like read in the church. So it's like hearing the word of God. Doesn't it say faith comes by hearing? Maybe not so much. Reading is good, but hearing it. Anyway, that's my excuse. So they have a thing called the Torah, so that's the Exodus part. Every year you would go through it, and I can guarantee every time you go through this every year, you would see something you've never seen before. What I'm going to show you today is actually the second year. This is like a 6-year Bible study thing that I'm going through. This is actually, I'm going to show you sections from year 2. One year you might actually study the prophets. So they would study 1 Kings 7, chapter 7, verse 40 to 50, which is also good to read. I would actually say to understand the prophetic, you first need to understand the Torah. So you learn the Torah, the prophetic, and then it just gets deeper and deeper. Not listed in here, but there's actually a gospel reading that you would actually read during the week too. And maybe one year we can go through the Gospels. One year, actually, one of the studies is on the book of Acts. And it's a bit advanced, and I wouldn't actually recommend going through it until you get this, because I look at it and go, oh, it's hard for me. That's a really cool thing, the titles of Messiah. Some of these are taken from Christian, some of them are taken from Jewish perspective. Like, who knew that he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High is actually talking about Messiah? Messiah is the one that dwells in the secret place of the Most High. And us being in him, we also do, if we dwell. So it's pretty cool. So let's have a look at a few of this. If this is okay, we can go through it like this. And please ask questions. So this is Exodus 35:1. I want to show you some pretty cool stuff. It says, then Moses assembled all the congregation of the sons of Israel. My screen's blanking out, but anyway. Moses returned from atop Mount Sinai, radiating the glory of God. Let's just slow down. So in the previous chapter, you need to put it in context. We have Moses coming down the mountain with the tablets, and they committed the sin of the golden calf, and he broke the tablets. He went up again into the presence of God, and he came down the mountain again a second time with new tablets. Any ideas what that could sound like? Anybody on Zoom? I'm going to pick on people on Zoom that are turning their videos off and are not going to talk. You sit over here, Javon. Javon, you got any ideas?
Yeah, is it like the returning of Christ?
Very good. So, this should be huge if you think about it. We're studying Exodus, and we're actually going to understand the first coming of Messiah and the second coming. And you understand the pattern for it. By understanding these passages in Exodus, you're going to understand how Messiah came in the first place and how he's going to come again, and our part to play in it. Hopefully that blows your mind. I thought that's cool. Let me have a look. So he, the first time he goes up, he comes down, it's broken. Who does that sound like? So Jesus was broken. The tablets, Jesus was broken for us. So then he goes back up the mountain. It sounds like Jesus is going back up into the presence of God. Then he comes back and he brings back new tablets. And his face shines with, they look on him and they can't see him properly. It's all speaking of Jesus. So Moses is like a picture of who Jesus is, which is pretty cool. During his ascent the second time, he gets a revelation of the 13 attributes of God, which is the 13 attributes of mercy. I think we talked about that in Yom Kippur teaching. Really, really, really important if you learn that on how to pray, but that was the previous week. So we're getting to 35:1. Let me bring 3 key. Yay. So Moses returned from the top of Mount Sinai, radiating the glory of God. As soon as he arrived in the camp, he assembled all the congregation of the sons of Israel. This Torah portion takes its name from the Hebrew word for Exodus 35:1, Vayak'hel. The verb kahal means to assemble. So Vayak'hel means and he assembled. So if you look here, that's the name of the Torah portion. It's about the assembly. It's about us. The descent of Moses at the end of the previous Torah portion alludes to the second coming of Messiah, just as Moses assembled Israel at the time of his appearing. When Messiah comes again, he will gather together the assembly of Israel from the four corners of the world. Then the whole nation of Israel will be called the assembly of Messiah. This concept helps us understand the meaning behind the New Testament word church. As a noun, the Hebrew word kahal means assembly, congregation, or community. The Torah refers to the community of the tribes of Israel as kahal, the assembly, a common Bible term denoting all Israel. The word kahal passes into the Greek Septuagint version of the Bible as ecclesia, You might have heard that one. The Greek word ecclesia appears throughout the Greek version of the Old Testament to speak to the assembly of Israel or the assembly of worshippers in the temple. However, when it occurs in the New Testament, English translators rarely render it as assembly. Inexplicably, English translators substitute the theological charged term church. The church translation of ecclesia has misled us. Because of the double standard in translation, it appears that most readers that the church first appeared in the New Testament, completely disconnected with the Old Testament and the nation of Israel. After all, the word church never appears before the book of Matthew. In reality, the word church does not appear in the Bible at all. By translating ecclesia as church, our English Bibles have led us to believe that the church is a new institution outside of Judaism and the Jewish people. All of this information about the original language implies that the New Testament church needs to be understood in continuity with the Jewish people, not as a disjuncture. In the broad sense, the church is the nation of Israel. You see how closely tied we are to them. The Messiah will gather all Israel, so that's Jews, Christians, as the nation of Israel. So the Messiah will gather all Israel into his assembly. In the narrow sense, the church is a subset of a larger assembly of Israel, consisting of believers who have identified Yeshua, Jesus, as the Messiah, and cast their allegiance with him. Is there any questions on that? I mean, that might be quite radical. So church actually is not in the New Testament. Wherever you see the word church, it's the translators have purposely translated as church. Sorry, that doesn't make sense. There's a lot deeper study in this, and I could get into it, but we're all one body in Messiah. It's not them and us. It's
an assembly of people.
Yeah.
That's the church.
It's assembly. So here Moses is talking to us. He's saying, and he gathered them together. And it's like he's going to give us instructions. And I'm sort of going a little prophetic here. This to me is talking about how we as a congregation build a place, a dwelling place for Jesus to come. So the ultimate is his second coming, but in reality, we can experience his presence if we learn how. So all this is talking about making a dwelling place for God, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah.
The enemy's book to break us away from Israel.
Yeah.
And you hear a lot of Christians say things that they shouldn't say about Israel.
Yeah. I'd say it's both ways though too.
Yeah.
So originally, if you study your early church history, the Jews were jealous of the Christians, and the Christians were upset with the Jews, didn't want to associate with them because the Romans were putting Jewish tax, and the persecution was against if any studied Torah or did anything that looked Jewish. So we wanted to look completely separate. And Jews today will attack Christians, and I've heard some of it and I don't like it at all. And Christians do the same thing. So to me, both parties need to repent and become back together. A lot of the stuff we don't understand and we make fun of them. And some of the things like we don't understand, and this is sort of a bit of a rabbit trail, like we'll make fun of them because, the Bible says, well, look at a tradition of theirs. Oh, they don't eat milk and meat together. Has anyone heard that one before? So when if you go to Israel and you go into a place of meat, you don't take milk. They have a kitchen and they actually make sure that meat and milk don't mix together. And you say, how stupid is that? And they take it from a passage in the Torah that actually says in English, you shall not boil a goat, a kid in its mother's milk. And go, well, that doesn't make, there's nothing to do with it, eating milk and meat. And we make fun of them. But the literal Hebrew, when you go back into the Hebrew, it actually is read that you shouldn't eat milk and meat together. It's a very Jewish thing, but I'm just saying we should be careful at making judgments. And I look at both sides and go, well, who's right? And it's just, you shouldn't jump to conclusions, is all I'm saying. Anyway, let's keep going, because I want to get to some good stuff. Let's go back here. That one. There we go. So the ingathering of the assembly. When Moses came down the mountain with the second set of tablets, he assembled the congregation of Israel to hear the instructions he had received on the mountain. As explained above, the second descent of Moses corresponds to the second coming of Messiah, and the assembling of the congregation of Israel corresponds to the messianic ingathering of Israel. Jewish eschatology refers to this future event as kibbutz galiot, i.e. the ingathering of exiles. According to Maimonides, he's a famous rabbi, the coming of Messiah will follow a specific order of events. I don't want to get too deep into that. But what's really spins me out is that the ingathering of the exiles has already started, giving us a hint that we're very close to the second coming of Messiah. So people are coming back from, even now, from Ukraine, Jewish people are coming back. And it's horrific what's going on. But all of that is like God's bringing his people back to Israel. Let's keep going. And for this, I'll turn off the key so you can see it. So Messiah establishes the kingdom, then he rebuilds the temple. Then he gathers in the exiles to Zion. I don't want to go too much into Maimonides, so I just want to skip through a few things. So the apostles explain that when Messiah comes, he would descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Messiah will rise first. Then we who are alive will remain, be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So we shall always be the Lord. That's out of 1 Thessalonians 4, 16, 17. We will meet the Messiah in the air and accompany him to Jerusalem. Behold, the Lord came with many thousands of his ones, Jude 1:14. The Messiah will take his stand on the Mount of Olives, defeat the enemies of Israel, and establish the kingdom. Then he will build up the temple with the greater ingathering of the rest of the Jewish people will begin as described by the prophets. The nation will participate by providing transportation to bring the Jewish people to Zion from all over the earth. The sketch of the second coming indicates that the ingathering begins prior to the building of the temple with the rapture or of the ecclesia of Messiah, corresponding to the words, then Moses assembled all the congregation. So there's just one verse and we've got that much information. So I know that's talking about second coming stuff. The assembly of Messiah, those who have faithfully waited for return, will arrive in Jerusalem with him as the first fruits of the ingathering. So just remember that word, first fruits. So may your assembly be gathered from the ends of the earth into your kingdom. That's a quote from somewhere. After the Messiah has gathered his assembly from the ends of the earth and brought them into his kingdom, he will rebuild the temple. As the construction of the temple is still underway, he will summon the nations to bring the rest of the Jewish people to Zion. And there's some quotes. Let's have a look at the building. Is there any questions on that? You guys on Zoom are too quiet. Hello?
Just sitting and taking it all in.
It just broke up a little bit, sorry.
I'm just sitting here listening and taking it all in.
Okay, good. I like questions.
Hello.
Let's have a look at the building the temple. Let's switch across to here. So this is out of Exodus 35:4. Moses spoke to the congregations of the sons of Israel, saying, "This is a thing which the Lord has commanded." Moses, the first Redeemer, came down the mountain in the glory of the Father. Then he assembled the people of Israel. He reiterated the commandment of the Sabbath, and he delivered the commandments pertaining to the building of the tabernacle. So just real quickly, why is this, anybody got an idea why the Sabbath is important? What does it represent? Rest, that's good. So I'll give you a little bit short, but the Sabbath, which the Jews are commanded to keep, and for us we're meant to remember, and I did a teaching on that a while ago, it It's meant to teach us that when Messiah comes, we don't need to do any work. We can just rest and enjoy the kingdom. He's done it's like we labour to enter into the rest, it says in the book of Hebrews. So it's like the Sabbath is meant to be a teaching to show us, this is a wedding present from God, to show us what the kingdom looks like. So, we can look at that more another day. Okay, let's go back to this 3. When Messiah, the ultimate Redeemer, comes, he will follow the pattern of the first Redeemer. Now you know why you need to study Moses. If you want to know what Jesus is about to do, you need to study Moses. He will follow the pattern of the first Redeemer. He will gather his assembly, reinstitute the Sabbath, and rebuild the temple as the prophets have promised. The destruction of the temple corresponds to the death of Messiah, and the rebuilding corresponds to his resurrection. On the third day, he said, in 3 days I will raise it up, out of John 2:19. Nearly 2,000 years have already elapsed from the time of the temple's destruction. With the Lord's 1 day is like 1,000 years, 1,000 years like 1 day, out of 2 Peter 3:8. This indicates that the Messiah will raise the temple in the third millennium after its destruction. Exodus 35:4-5, Moses said to all the congregation of the people, this is the thing that the Lord has commanded, take from among you a contribution to the Lord. Whoever is generous heart, let them bring the Lord's contribution, gold, silver and bronze. So Moses, back in context, God already spoke about this, I call it a shopping list of what he needs to build the tabernacle, I think 10 chapters before this. And now they committed the sin of the golden calf. Now so the sin of the golden calf has done damage to the relationship between God and the people. So what Moses is talking about here is how can we atone or remove the damage done to the relationship. I'm jumping a little ahead here, but that's what atonement does. It removes the damage done so that you and him can be one. So he's talking about atonement happens when we invest in building a dwelling place for God. That's what I'm saying out of this. Now, Exodus 25. It was interrupted by the golden calf. The word used in here, talking about a contribution, is the Hebrew word terumah. Has anyone heard terumah before?
Trumpet.
No, that's... I've forgotten. Feast of Trumpets is... I actually think it's probably important that we actually talk about how money works in the Bible, because we don't talk about it as a church. If you're interested, I could do it another day, but just briefly go over it. So I think Shane Wheeler does some really good teaching on this, and I'm not sure, how many people have actually heard, you can wave at me or say, has anyone ever heard the teaching on Terumah before? Yeah. Janet has, no. So is there a few people? Because if you're interested, we can teach it. Okay, well, it hasn't. I found it a very, very powerful concept, and let me just, I'll share a little bit on it, if that's cool. Are you cool with that? Yep, cool. So Terumah means first fruits. So just imagine most income in the days of the tabernacle, it would have been like a square field. God says that you're meant to leave the corners of your field for the poor, for the priests and people like that, and you're meant to live off a circle. So Terumah is actually, the rabbis have calculated as 1/40th of your income. And it might sound nuts, but I'll just read through. So I've got some notes here. So it means heave offering. It means lifting up. So they take the offering and lift it up high. It's where we get the wave offering. It's generally translated as offering in the King James Bible. It's sometimes oblation and heave offering. It's a different thing than tithing. Tithing is a very complicated subject, and I'm terrified to try and teach it because, to be honest, the Christian church has dumbed it down so much that it's like a very complicated subject. Like, it's not just 10%, it can be 25%. There's all the different rules about it that I think a lot of the churches put people into bondage about it. And I don't want to do that. But I do know that simple faith, trusting God, and it does something very powerful to you. But I'll just look at it. So Terumah sanctifies and makes holy the whole. So if you say, Lord, here's 1/40th, and I think 1/40th is, if you have an income of $1,000 a week, it's $25. It's not much. So they have first tithe, second tithe. First tithe is 10%, second tithe is 10%. Two tithes, what? Second tithe actually goes to yourself, I think. And then the 1/40th goes to the priesthood. And it's all over the Bible.
Yeah, Norman.
Yeah.
Not only do we tithe, which is 10%, there's free will offerings, and then there's first offerings, like if you have a new job, whatever the wage that is, that's your offering on top of your normal tithe. Yes, and I think there's a couple other.
Most of it is based on the sacrificial system. So like the burnt offering is a free will offering. It's just pure worship to God. But I don't want to get too deep into that, but I wanted to sort of explain that, okay, I guess what I want to focus on tonight is using this to show you how we're meant to, as a church, as part of Israel, build a dwelling place for Messiah. Does that sound cool? So the whole idea of this Terumah is that giving this gift towards the building of God's tabernacle, his presence, did something to the people. So Rabbi Hillel says, if a person honours Terumah at 1/40th level, his eye is said to be full of light. If he honours Terumah at a 1/50th level, his eye is said to be a middling eye. If he honours Terumah at 1/60th level, the person has an evil eye. Now, Matthew 6, Jesus talks about the eye of the eye being evil. Oh my goodness! So I won't go through it now, but Jesus talks about the same thing, and he's actually quoting Hillel here and talking about, well, an evil eye is somebody being stingy. So even Jesus talks about it.
Yeah, Norm, I remember the teaching that we had from Shane Willard on Terumah, and he drew a circle, and then he drew a sort of an oblong, and then he put a circle in the middle of it, and then the four corners, and that was what he's referring to as the Terumah.
Exactly.
The circle was what you lived on, and then you sort of left four corners, and I think there was one was the 40th, which we went to the priesthood, and then there was others to the poor. I remember him teaching on that, and he drew the circle, and that's what you live on, is the circle. And that when you do that, it's sanctified, and the Lord blesses you.
Yes, that's very good, Janet. I'll just read you, listen to this. This is Ezekiel 44:30. It says, and the first fruits, which is Terumah of all kinds, and every offering of all kinds from all your offerings shall belong to the priests. You shall give to the priests the first of your dough, that a blessing may rest on your house. So this actually has something to do with bringing blessing to your house. Proverbs 3:9-10 says, honour the Lord with the wealth, with the first fruits, that's Terumah, of your produce. then your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will be bursting with wine. So Romans 11:16 says, and if the dough offered as first fruits, as in Terumah, is holy, so is the whole lump. So if the root is holy, so are the branches. I mean, does that give you a little bit of insight what's going on here? So in Exodus 34, 4-5, Moses said to the congregation, this is the thing the Lord commanded, take from among you your Terumah to the Lord. Whoever has a generous heart, let him bring the Lord's contribution. So that tells you straight away, it's like somebody that has a generous heart. Like if you're in fear, if your heart is not in the right place, I would say you shouldn't be giving. I would also say that if you're in fear because of money, then you should give, because that will smash the fear. Because you are actually acting out of faith, saying, no, I choose to give to the Lord out of faith, and I smash that. That's, yeah. Is that sort of clear? So the people that are going to give to do with building the tabernacle for the coming of the Messiah is those who freely give gifts, those that were moved of their heart to build a place for God. Now, chapter 35, 22 to 29 actually covers that really well. I'll just read this. The Torah describes how the children of Israel brought so many voluntary offerings for the construction of the tabernacle that Moses called a stop to donations. The people gave so enthusiastically that there was more than enough for the construction of the tabernacle, and there was even material left over. So what would happen is of a church, if we got so excited about building a dwelling place, so this church should not be just a church for us. We should be contributing and saying, no, we're trying to make, I mean, what is our church about? Is it just so we can come and enjoy ourselves? Or are we trying to make it a house for all nations? A place where people can come in and experience the presence of God? So my question to everybody is like, how can we, and I'm not talking about just giving money, I'm talking about time, I'm talking about prayer, I'm talking about helping. How can we make this place, firstly, did you notice anybody notice when actually going through these things how particular God was in making sure it was built just right? There's like all the right ingredients, and it's like, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but see, notice how like it talks about Obadiah and another guy, can't remember the name, sorry. They were anointed with Hukmah bin Adat, which is wisdom, knowledge and understanding on actually how to craft stuff. But the people gave so that they could actually do it. That actually ties into the New Testament when the Spirit of God comes upon the people. The Spirit of God gives us gifts, wisdom, knowledge and understanding on actually how to build God's tabernacle, how to build a church. So we need to make this church. So I look at this and go, how can we take Exodus 35, 36, 37, 38 and apply it to now? How can we, using the gifts of the Spirit, tap in? So the gifts of the Spirit are not just to set people free, they are, but they're to build a dwelling place for God to come. See, there's one thing, if you have an offence in your heart, the gifts of the Spirit should be activated to expose that so that that offence comes out, because then the presence of God comes in. That's the ultimate goal of being delivered and healed, is so you can experience the presence of God. It's not just so you can have a good life and be blessed, it's so that God can come near to you. And I would actually say if your motive is just to get blessed, then it's not going to be good for you. I remember there's a saying out of Pirkei Avot, which is an awesome extra book not in the Bible, but Jesus quotes from it, is all I say. It says that if you pursue Torah for, I'll put it in my own words, selfish gain. In other words, I'm getting this knowledge so people will think that I'm so knowledgeable and I'm so holy. It's like if you're seeking Torah for wrong motives, it actually, I think Hillel says it'll end in a curse. So the principle is like you can have two people studying the Bible, two people can go to Bible college, one will end up, it'll be a blessing, and another person will actually destroy them. Because the motive of the heart is self. I heard this really cool teaching from a rabbi from Hasidus is today, and he says that, I'll put it in Christian terms, a lot of people go to Bible college to become something, but they teach that you should be going to Bible college to actually become nothing. Because it's in the becoming nothing that he becomes everything. So coming to church is not about becoming something. Coming to church is actually about becoming nothing so that he is everything. Is that a radical concept? It's destroying self. I know that sounds hard, but that's, yeah.
Less of us and more of him.
Yeah. And that's the hard thing. It's like, why are you doing it? I ask myself that a lot. And I don't always like the answer. Any questions, comments, Zoom people? I'm picking on you because you're not here.
I had read something about if you empty yourself of all the bad things, then you can fill yourself with God. So you basically, when you sacrifice, you're getting rid of rubbish, so to speak, and the goodness of God is filling you. So you're getting closer to God. That's what I want to say.
That's actually really good. Go, Wesley.
Norman, you mentioned God chose people and filled them with knowledge, wisdom and understanding. We read in Exodus 35, we hear of two people, Bezalel and Aholiab. And I looked up those meanings. With Jewish names, they have meanings, and it's very important. Bezalel means in the shadow or presence of God, and Aholiab means the tent of God. Isn't that amazing? God used the person who's making a tabernacle, which is like a tent, for God, and his name is Tent of God. Isn't that wonderful?
That's pretty cool.
And I read in verse 26 that God stirred women's hearts with wisdom that they could spin yarn for the tent. Isn't that amazing? Our God gives us the ability to do what he wants us to do. If he calls us to do something, he gives us the ability, the wisdom, the knowledge and the understanding. What a great God. Praise the Lord.
That's really good. I like that. This is a prompting. With the gifts of the Spirit, right? I think I heard this teaching on the Kenneth Copeland or Billy Brim or something. If the gifts of the Spirit flow according to our faith, like where we direct it. If we're focused on healing, it's like the gifts will flow in that area. What am I trying to say here? We should be able to expand our expectation in the gifts of the Spirit to go a bit wider. Like as a church, we seem to be very, very flowing in the prophetic, like lifting each other up, encouragement, which is absolutely awesome and it should stay. But what about trying to expand that out a bit wider into, I want to see others, does that, I'm just throwing it out there. Let's have a look at, let's just go, because I want to stop at 8, and there's 10 minutes to go. We could be here all night. This is, we'll just have a look at this. So Exodus 35:21 says that everyone whose heart stirred him and everyone whose spirit moved him came and brought the Lord's contribution for the work of the tent of meeting and for its service and for the holy garments. When Moses came down the mountain, he commanded the assembly of Israel to start building the tabernacle. As explained above, Moses did not build the tabernacle. He brought down the instruction, but the people did the building. This is like, prophetically, I look at that as like that the pastors will be prophetically moved in a direction, but it's the people that actually have to go do the work. That's the way I read it. He will oversee the construction of the temple. He has experience as a carpenter. Yeshua compared his holy body to the temple. When he said, I will raise it up, the Gospel of John explains he was speaking of the temple of his body, John 2:21. The Messiah is a living temple in whom all the fullness of deity dwells in bodily form, Colossians 2:9. In him, the Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. Moshe Chaim Latzo uses a similar analogy comparing the body of a righteous person, a Sadiq, to the temple. I can teach Sadiq, I've done it before. The holy person who cleaves constantly to God, behold, a person like this, he himself is considered to be like the tabernacle, the temple, and the altar. And this is also said regarding the righteous, because the Shekinah, which is, we say Shekinah, means dwelling presence, dwells in them just like it dwelled in the temple. The apostles sometimes call the assembly of Messiah the body of Messiah. If the Messiah's body is a temple, then by extension the assembly of Messiah is a temple. We are the temple of the living God. From this perspective, the construction of the tabernacle teaches about the building up of the body of Messiah into a spiritual temple. So that tells me that the gifts of the Spirit, the church's focus, is to build each other up, to be a dwelling, to be the dwelling place of the Shekinah, the dwelling presence of God. But you can see, I like this up here, a holy person cleaves constantly to God. Usually what happens is we have distractions that come along to stop us cleaving to God. We start worrying about the future, which is one thing that Jesus taught us. We're worried about money. We're worried about this. We're worried about that. Fear, worry takes us out of the presence of God. Hurt, offense takes us out of the presence of God. It stops you cleaving, learning how to be. Anyway, let's keep going with this. Cool. Having been built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Messiah, Yeshua himself being the cornerstone in whom the whole building being fitted together is growing into a holy temple in the Lord, in whom you're being built together into a dwelling of God in the Spirit. Ephesians 2:20-22. Okay, just said what I said. To build the tabernacle, the people of the assembly of Israel all brought different gifts as they were able. They laboured in different departments and they gave of their various talents to complete the tabernacle. Some people contributed gold, some silver, some had precious stones, some had fabrics and so forth. Some had skills in weaving, some in casting, some in embroidery, some in gem setting, some in woodworking. By combining all of their talents and gifts, they successfully created a sanctuary for God on earth. That tells me, okay, our whole church, every member here has a specific, unique talent and gift. And if it's not coming out of you, then we're not able to build the tabernacle properly. So our job as brothers and sisters is to actually help draw that gift out, that talent out of each other. So if one of our brothers is actually suffering from depression or in fear or hurt, they're not going to be able to bring their talent out, are they? Because they're focusing on that. They're not actually clinging to God, so they can't be who they're meant to be. So we're the ones that are actually suffering because they're not functioning, are they? So that's the way I look at it. Just as the Israelites laboured to make various components of the tabernacle, the assembly of Messiah labours together to make a suitable dwelling place for the Almighty, a spiritual temple in which His Spirit takes residence. Everyone has something unique to contribute to the project, and everyone has a unique skill to bring to the work. Paul spoke of the assembly of Messiah metaphorically as a body to illustrate the concept of interdependence. He pointed out that many different parts comprise the human body. One person may be likened to a foot, another to a hand, yet another to an ear, and yet another to an eye. The body functions well only when all the various parts of the body perform the task for which they were created. In this regard, it would be ridiculous for some parts of the body to be envious of others. Though the body is comprised of different kinds of people with different roles to play, Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and although the different members bring different gifts to the body, we are all one body of Messiah. There are varieties of ministries and the same Lord. 1 Corinthians 12:5. A similar concept appears in Jewish mysticism. The mystics speak of the whole assembly of Israel as a single interrelated body. Paul illustrated the mutual dependency of the body parts on one another when he said, But now God has placed the members, each one of them, in the body, just as He desired. If they are all one member, where would the body be? But now we are many members, but one body. 1 Corinthians 12:18-20. The body of Messiah is a metaphor. Yeshua functions as the head. Messiah is also the head of the body, the ecclesia. Colossians 1:18. Paul reminded his readers to hold fast to the head, from which the entire body being supplied and held together by joints and ligaments grows with the growth which is from God. I don't want to go on too much information. Is that? I think that's a good thing. I mean, the rest of this goes on about Mary and how Mary was actually. There's a tradition that she was actually one of the 80 virgins that helped weave the veil. And actually, this is really important, but maybe for another day. It's talking about the veil and how the veil is Yeshua, Messiah. It's out of Hebrews. Is that cool? I just wanted to finish up at 8. Is there any questions? 2 of me. Zoom. Now's the time to talk. Or just before we talk. So we're only doing this every 2 weeks, mainly because I'm running a company and I'm absolutely crazy flat out, and I'd like to be able to do more, but I just can't. But if you look at the website, maybe I can show the website. Everybody can see that? So on the events page, if you click on here, I don't know if it works on most browsers, but we have a calendar for the church. So you can see here that we're on the 1st, and there's the transformation meeting and then Torah study. And you can see, you can click on any of these and it'll tell you more information about it. But on Saturdays, you can see here in pink, I've actually got what they would call the reading for that week. So if we click on here, this is Pekadai, and that's the Jewish year 5782. Down here you can see they read Exodus 38:21 to chapter 40, verse 38. And then you've got the half Torah, which is 1 Kings 7:51 to 8:21. And if you're studying the Gospels, you read Luke chapter 16, verse 1 to verse 13. So if you want to keep up with what we're doing, you could read 38:21 to 40:38. But when we come back, we come over here, you can see I've got the Torah Bible study here. And if we look at the week before, which is Vayak'hel, we're actually starting Leviticus chapter 1, verse 1 to 5. Oh, verse 1 to chapter 5, verse 26. So that's what we're going to study next week, or the week after. Is that cool? There's a lot in this, and I we just keep going through this. If you get something out of Pekadai, like you have a question, please ask it. I don't want to be really stringent with these things. I just want to go through it, and God will lead it wherever it needs to go. Anybody on Zoom got any questions?
Yeah, can I just say something? This is really powerful, Norman. I love it. It's great. I was just really meditating because I was reading it today, Exodus, how they brought in gold, and there was a ton of gold, and that's about $85 million worth to us today, but roughly, that's just roughly. But just how powerful that is, you know. We all have traces of gold in our body, actually, and I just, you know, the church, the wealth of the church, you know, and people come and we help people, and I was just meditating on that, and I just thought how powerful that is. Not in a greedy way, but for, you know, how powerful that is. So much gold. The wealth of the wicked is laid up for the just, and to be used wisely for God. Yeah.
That's very good.
I hope you understand.
I'm sure the pastors would be quite excited if the church started bringing lots of gold. The sages say that gold actually wasn't meant for use on earth, but God created it for holy stuff. So the inside of God's tabernacle is all gold. I think it says in the Torah portion we did that the menorah, the lampstand, was made of pure gold. This thing was huge. It must have been heavy too. But all the parts actually have deep and amazing meanings. And I always actually say that the studying of the tabernacle, every time it mentions numbers and what it is, it's all symbolic of Jesus and the blueprint of salvation and how the kingdom works. And I'd like to go through it, but again, we don't have time. Has anybody else on Zoom got something?
Yeah, Norm, I just found when I read the passages that God just gave those people that stepped forward that the wisdom and knowledge to do what they needed to do to actually build the tabernacle.
Supernatural, yeah.
There's two key people, but those two key people also taught others. And there was key people for every part of the tabernacle, even down to the on the veil, where they actually embroidered on the veil, and they used gold thread to do it. So I just found it interesting that every part of the tabernacle, there was somebody there to do it.
Yeah, it's the whole congregation built it, but they were given, again, I'd like to have gone through it, but for time, wisdom, knowledge and understanding are the three main things that the Spirit of God puts upon his people if we, I believe, by faith tap into it. So we should be able to look at, okay, Sunday morning, each one of you, Shannon's going to go, okay, Lord, I'm going to tap into wisdom, knowledge and understanding by your Spirit, and I'm going to come to church and I'm going to say something that's going to unlock someone. I mean, each of us can tap, and I'm not putting myself into, but I'm saying each of you that doesn't talk, and even the people on Zoom should be able to tap and step out of the boat, even just one word, say something that's going to do something about building a dwelling place for God inside somebody else's life. Or I like something I heard Kenneth Copeland said, it's like, he was teaching about where Jesus said, out of your belly shall flow rivers of living water. And he said that when many rivers come together, it creates a flood. So when the river comes out of each and every one of you and we come together on a Sunday, we should have a flood of the glory of God. It's the way it's meant to work. And maybe we've had a prophetic picture in the natural that we've been having floods here, that now we're going to have a spiritual flood of God's presence.
Norman, you said earlier that we need to encourage people in our church to exercise their gift for the edification of the body. Public speaking is number one fear for people, and there's only a few people that ever speak. I like to encourage the rest of the body who don't speak to share something. We're in the family of God, and we're not here to judge or criticise or laugh at. We just want to encourage one another. And look, I just invite people to just share what they've come across, the verse that they read today, how it inspired them. We're missing all this. The church is missing all this of what you have to share, the individual.
Yeah, that's See, there's 4 people here. So.
Yeah, I just, as I was sitting there, Shannon, I just really got it strongly on my heart. Like, your hands were made for God's purpose, and He's going to use you mightily. I don't think just, like, I can't fathom it, I can't understand it, but I just, as I was looking at you, I just really felt the Spirit. God is going to use your hands mightily. And
Good.
Where you are in this season, God is preparing you. He's preparing you. So, bless you, brother.
Cool. Anybody else on Zoom? If not, we can...
Norman.
Oh, yay, shalom.
Shalom.
We miss you being
Let me
here.
tell you how important you are. I was all prepared to come to your meeting tonight because I wanted to rejoin my church family in person.
That would be wonderful.
And I was out in my car this afternoon and the alternator drive belt broke.
Oh,
And I thought, oh, it doesn't matter, I'll just drive down there anyway. I don't really need that for a while. And I was driving along and I had to call in home first. And as I turned in my driveway, the steering was failing because it's electric. And as I pulled up in front of my garage and put the handbrake on, it failed because it's electric. But thank God that as I drove in the garage with no power steering whatsoever, my brakes still functioned and they're electric. And so I really wanted to come to the meeting, and somebody thought you were so important that they denied me the pleasure.
it sounds extremely painful.
So I'm just trying to encourage you and know how important you are.
I'd rather be encouraged without hearing about your suffering.
I didn't really suffering. It just stopped me from getting down there. It was too late and too far to walk.
So we look forward to seeing you on church on Sunday.
Yes,
Everybody at church on Sunday.
assuming I've got a drive belt by then. Otherwise, I'll have to make other arrangements.
I'm sure someone would like to pick you up, and if you don't, let me know and I'll come pick you up. Just have to come early.
Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Norman.